Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it is Tuesday, October 31st, and this will be our chart lesson for today. It is the last trading day of the month, so we'll be going into November. I mean, this year, probably about 6 more weeks of trading, and then this year is done. Normally, really not even that much because we'll have a week at Thanksgiving where there won't be anything going on. The markets will be open several of those days, but generally I take that whole week off. There won't be much happening. It'll be a holiday. Really, from Thanksgiving on, there's not much going on, but I usually don't take off. I'll take off a week for Thanksgiving, then I'll work the first week or two of December, and then I'll take off the last 2 weeks of the year, and that's how I normally do it. And I'll probably do it that way again this year. So anyway, here's a look at our daily chart today. Notice that we did come back and test that breakout area. So far, it's holding. We traded above that, but notice how it closed. Let me zoom in here a little bit, make sure you can see it. Notice how we closed below that. Does that mean it's going to hold? I don't know. We'll see what tomorrow brings. The market's going to open back up here for tomorrow's trading, for our overnight session, and tomorrow's trading. It opens back up at 5 o'clock my time, so that is about 14 minutes away. So we're about 14 minutes away before we'll see what the market's going to start doing for today. And you can't really tell the overnight. Tomorrow's what will tell the tale. So we'll see. Are we going to turn down from here, or are we going to push through here and get back up in this range again? Uh, we've really relieved a lot of the oversold situation here. We're still in the low end of the bands, but we're out of the extremely oversold area, so we've relieved some of that pressure. So there is room to go down now. There is room to go lower. We could rally and turn down. We could just rally on back up to the midline. We'll just have to see if this support resistance line holds or if it ends up acting as support again. So far, it looks like it's holding, but that means nothing. We need another day or two of price action to know for sure, probably, and then we'll have to go from there. So anyway, there were a couple of news items today to be aware of. We'll talk about them when we get over to the other chart. But other than that, the daily chart looks pretty standard here. So just what you'd expect. We pushed through this support resistance line. We're coming back to test it. So far, it's holding. But let's flip over to the 2,000 tick chart. It's mostly a mixed trading, but we did close up today, as you can see. I mean, this really shows the trading. We spent a bunch of time in a range today and then broke out in the afternoon, and then sold off the highs slightly. So closing back below this important support resistance line here. So let's flip over to that other chart. And here it is. And once again, you can see that it was mostly sideways until we broke out here. And we probably had 2.5 hours of trading to, upward movement before we got into 230 hour. And then we sold off of that. We didn't get back in the range. We headed that direction, and we did get a break outside this trend line right here. But we didn't get back inside the range. So as of now, it's mostly a sideways day that broke out late and closed slightly higher. You can see the two news items. I blocked them off here. One of them was at 7:30, so be flat 7:15 or so. Really though, if you have to be flat by 7:15, it's almost wise just not to even take a trade yet. Just wait for the news to clear. Didn't really do much today. Most of the time, these kind of red type high volatility news items do not really affect the market that greatly. The past few months they have, because the economy's been so rocky, but right now they're kind of coming back to their old ways where they don't really have a lot of effect. I would still be on the sidelines for a few minutes after these come out for now, just in case, because the economy has not really improved. In fact, I think it's gotten worse. The higher interest rates, the inflation, all that stuff is killing the economy. The price of gas, I mean, that's where the average person's money goes. Food, groceries, gas, and all that stuff is sky high. Housing, all that stuff is double what it was a year or two ago. And that's hurting people because wages have not kept up. So if your wages have kept up, That's great for you as traders. It may not affect us that much, uh, but for the general public, I mean, people have less money in their pocket, so that affects the economy, and I think the economy's slowing whether they admit it or not. And anyway, so this stuff can still affect prices greatly. So just I would respect them for now, and if it gets to where over the next month or two they're not really change, you're not really noticing anything from them, then we can go back to trading them. Because used to I didn't worry too. Used to the only ones I really worried about were FOMC type announcements. And but lately these have been causing some hiccups, and not really today, but that doesn't mean tomorrow or the next day they won't. So let's watch them for a while, and then if it looks like they're not affecting anything anymore, we'll go back to ignoring them, everything but the FOMC stuff. So, but anyway, here it is, mostly sideways. Just before lunch, we broke higher, broke out, and of course you would expect that to fail. It usually does, and we traded back down. Still closed higher, so it's mostly up day from yesterday. We closed way down here yesterday. So we'll see what the overnight and tomorrow morning brings and where we stand tomorrow morning. But that's where we stand today. Let's zoom in here, go through the trades. We clearly had the trend up, break, a few legs up, and kind of work sideways before we sold off again. Again, I think you probably should be flat. There was no long here because it's too congested, and by the time the short came, it was too close to the 730. It was within 715 or so. So, and you just need to be flat through. I mean, I blocked it off here through. Let's just see what that is. This bar here, 740 or so. I mean, you really couldn't trade any of this anyway, so it didn't matter. And then suddenly you have a first entry, second entry right at the key entry point. It was a breakout pullback. There's plenty of room to the lows here, so I like taking that trade. There's another test of it here, but by that time it looks kind of congested. You've got two more dojis with very small bodies, and then you got two more that are mostly sideways there. So I don't think you can take that trade. It's very tempting, but I think you're better off to sit tight. It drops on down, you come back, and even though this is truly by the counts of first entry, there's clearly a couple of legs up, but you can also see this trend channel, a close outside, move to a new high, and it turns down. And I drew my trend line there. So you really didn't have a trend line there at that point, but I still like that trade. I marked it green because it's technically by the counts it's a first entry, but there is a hidden second entry. The trend channel to the upside did play out. It really kind of gives you a third test, and although it couldn't get that high here. So maybe you take that trade. It turns out to be a great trade, but it's a little bit aggressive, so I marked it green. And we're just sideways. You can't enter there. And that's what's been killing us lately. You get these nice sideways corrections that are real tight that you can't trade in, and then the bottom drops out and there's no setup. And so you just really don't get a setup. So you get a lot of good moves that are negated because there's no setup. And you can't really fudge the rules because that'll come back to haunt you. So we drop on down. Looks like maybe we got an overshoot. I don't know for sure. It really looks like it fits perfectly other than that overshoot. So I believe that's an overshoot. And we just start working sideways. I don't see any longs or shorts in there. And then it breaks out to the downside. And then we get this trend back. A close outside, new high. It confirms that trend line on the second entry. That's that setup. I really like it. Unfortunately, it's right at the news item. It's like seconds before the news comes out, this 9 o'clock news item up here. So that makes it a little questionable. I drew the line to it so I could talk about it. I mean, if you trust your read, you take that trade because the move will probably be to the downside. But if you're not 100% sure of your read, I wouldn't take that trade. And one of the things that concerns me is it looks like we got an overshoot here. So that usually leads to a break rather quickly. So you could get trapped right there and prices make another leg up. So I pointed it out to talk about it. Right now, I think you'd still be better off to skip that trade due, because of the volatility that we've seen during news items of that type. So it's up to you. I think for now you'd be smart to skip it. Um, Quick move down, but find support here. Kind of gets a triple test, but I don't. You wouldn't want to go long here yet. And then you get a little failed break lower. You get a higher low here, but again, it's sideways. I didn't draw the little. We're still in a downtrend. There's no reason to go long here. And you can see there's a little bit of a breakout there. And so as tempting as that is, don't take it. It turns out to be a great move, but I don't see anything all the way up here that you want to take. And then we're just kind of chopping along. You get your close outside, move to a new high. You make a little 2-bar matching high and a second entry short there. You're not looking for second entries, but if you get one, pay attention to it. And there's plenty of room back to the EMA, a long way away. So I like that trade. There's a lower high here. I marked it green. The only reason is because there's just barely enough room to get out. I think there's exactly 6 ticks. And so you're pressing it there. And then also this didn't, if this would have broke on by, maybe you take that trade. But when this one held up inside, it's starting to look congested. It looks like the midline's holding. Skip that trade. Drops on down, you get a failed breakout the low side. That one's tempting. I did not mark it. Most breakouts are going to fail. But there's also, I did not draw it. There's a trend line working right down through there. So you have to go long right into that trend line. And so for that reason, I did not draw that one, or I did not mark that one. I just think it's too risky. And of course, it would have worked, but you still end up going lower. And then a few minutes later, you get a second entry short on a breakout pullback that tried to go. Look how many times we tried to go higher there and failed. And you could call that a triple test. And it's also a second entry short. And we're expecting at least a retest of this low. And we might be going all the way to the other side of the range. So I like that one. I marked it green, but it's real close to being red. I think you could argue for it to be red. And all this is a retest. I usually don't draw the trend on that, but I just drew it to show you what kind of how this looked. And of course, you get the close outside, move to a new low, try to make another low and made a higher low, but there's no setup, and it just rockets up. And from there, it as we talked about, it just kind of shot up, rocketed up here. You get a close outside, first entry, second entry long. Probably could call that a triple test too. Signal bar is close, but I think with a triple test, the second entry, and you're expecting a retest of the high, I like going long there. And you can see it rockets up pretty quickly. Pulls back. Looks like you may get a second leg up, or it gets a second attempt, and then you make a double top. And that is a first entry, second entry short. And so I like going short just below that bar, just to ride it back, and it may turn there. It ends up going much lower, too congested. Finally rallies up here, just a first entry. You actually get a second entry here, but signal bar is no good. You do get a lower high here, but it looks a little congested. I think you'd probably be okay to take that trade. I marked it green. Because we already have a break in new low, and we're kind of in no man's land here where this could break lower and then turn back up and make another leg, or it could turn down. But there's reasons. You got a second entry and then a lower high, so maybe you get to take that one. And then, of course, it bottoms out here, just congested, so you really can't go long there. Runs back up, and it tests this high up here again. And it makes a high, closes outside, tries to go higher again, and then turns down. I don't think I would trade that on the engulfing bar. I'd wait for this to close to make sure it was bearish. And if it breaks below that, with that much room back to the EMA, that's probably worth taking. I marked it green. It's it's a little bit aggressive, so I did mark it green. Of course, it just it looks like it's going to bounce. It tries, and the bottom falls out and it runs down here and it actually breaks out. And of course, most of the time that's going to be a failure, but you don't really get a setup to trade it as a failure. And then we run back to the highs again. It makes a new high here, but you might look at that as a triple test. I didn't mark it. You're still in this green channel. It does make a higher high here. I think it's a perfect double top. So maybe you take that as a triple test. There's a long way back to the EMA again, and it's been going back and forth, and we're definitely in a range here. So that's a possibility. And of course, it runs down here and it does the same thing. It fails out the bottom and makes a slightly higher low with a big signal bar. The problem, this bar is really big. As long as there's room back to that EMA, maybe you take that, and it does look like an overshoot here. If you move this over, it just doesn't fit. There's no excuse for why that's bouncing. It's got to be a trend line or a midline. And if you draw it that way, you can see that probably looks more accurate. So it does look like an overshoot, and it'll probably be a failed breakout. So this thing could shoot all the way up, and this could be the low of the day. And I think it does turn out to be the low of the day. So these are sometimes worth being aggressive on, these failed breakouts. And that was an easy move right there. It didn't even find resistance at the EMA, really. Just shot right on through. Gets a close outside, moves to a new high, and then you're just working sideways. So no setup there. It does go higher, and it's just too congested. It finally, notice you did get a two-legged correction, but so this is like a new trend here. It gets a close outside, two legs up, and it gets that bearish bar right there. Maybe you take that. It's like a there's a double top there, and it's like a little failed break higher. And there's plenty of room back to the EMA. So maybe you take that. You get a lower high here. If you take this one, you have to do it on the engulfing bar, which I don't have too much problem with that, other than the fact that it bounced here a couple of times, and it looks like it's just bounced there again, maybe. So you really almost need to wait for that to close, and by the time it closes, it's too close to the lows. So I'm just not crazy about that one. I did mark it green. It's a possibility if you want to trade it on the engulfing bar and be a little aggressive. Bounces, makes another, really it looks like a triple test, but you got all those bars there, and you got two doji with matching lows. If it breaks below that, you'll probably get a scalp, but it could trap you and turn back up. And you see how it tried to bounce there and made a little double bottom. It would have ended up working, but that's really, really aggressive there. You might argue for it to be green because it's a lower high. It is a second entry too. Notice the new swing low, first entry, second entry. I'm just not crazy about it. You're kind of stuck between this new high and the old range high, and you can see it working in there. So this is probably going to snap back if it does push through. So the question is, how much room are you going to get enough to scalp out? So that's my concerns with it. Runs up, finally breaks out, gives a pullback. No setups to go long. Runs to a new high, pulls back. First entry, pulls back, and you get a second entry long when it breaks above there. That looks a little congested, but it's right off the EMA. It's right off the midline. There's a real close triple test there because you tried to test it lower, went higher, it comes back lower again, goes higher, comes back lower again, and then takes off from there. So there's a triple test in there. It's congested, no doubt about it, but it's a second entry, triple test, and you got the triple support, you got the EMA, you got the trend line, you got the midline. So you got all kinds of support there to kind of protect your stop. So maybe I like that one. So if it breaks above that, it should at least test that high. So you should get a scalp. And of course, it's a pretty good trade. You can tell it caught some shorts off guard right there. And then it finally moves to a new high, and then you get the break here. It moves a long way, but it's probably because it came off the high of the channel here, and that kind of overpowered it. But we do get the retest here, and another channel with the break and a retest. I don't see any shorts here. I think you just have to be careful going short here. There's just nothing that sets up that's safe. There's a failure here, but it's too congested. These are all just first entries. Finally, you get a break, moves up. I don't know if it quite makes a new high, but the trend line's holding it, so it's okay if it doesn't. You probably don't want to go short there, but if you get a lower high right here, maybe. The only reason I'm a little leery of that lower high is because you got a double bottom right there. It should probably turn down because we just came off the highs of this channel. But you never know. You see how it tried to bounce right there, and it's getting a little late in the day too. But I marked it green. It is a second entry, and it's also a failed second entry long. So there's a couple of different reasons to consider it. So it's up to you. And then it's too late. It's into 230 there. So there it is. That's how I saw it today. The one thing I would say in closing, this is hard trading, really from about 9 o'clock till it broke out up here. And even then, it's still mixed, but you can clearly see the trend line or the EMA's pointing up now, and prices are mostly above it. But they're still trading below it occasionally. So it's still mixed. This is just these kind of days are hard. And so if you're struggling or you force a trade, the main thing is remember that no trade is better than a losing trade. And the other thing is, let's say you do have a loser on a day like this. My recommendation is don't sit there and take another loser. Get up, walk away for 30 minutes. Go have a cup of coffee, drink of your choice. If your kids are at home, go play with your kids for a minute. If your kids aren't, if you have a dog, go throw the ball with your dog for 30 minutes. Sorry, I had a little interruption there. I'm trying to get through with this thing, but I think this is worth saying. If you have that loss, because losers lead to losers, winners tend to lead to winners, and losers tend to lead to losers. So if you do have that loss, especially if you have two of them, I'd say even if you have one loss, especially if you're trying to get profitable and you're trading live, get up, go walk away for 30 minutes. And the thing is, don't think about the trade. Don't worry about the trade. Get your mind completely off of it. Get it on something happy. Get it on your kids, your pets, your friends, your spouse, your significant other, whatever it is. Talk to somebody. Get your mind completely off trading, and do that for 30 minutes. Then come back, and then you can look at your chart. Usually it'll be crystal clear. If you take that 30-minute break, you'll see exactly what you did wrong. You'll feel more confident about it because, hey, you see your mistake, and you've had a little time to digest it and get over it, and you've got your mind off of it. You can come back fresh, and generally that will, because if you just if you let it shake you up and you take your next trade, it's probably going to be a loser. And if you take two losers, then you're very apt to blow your account. So that's what happens to people. It happens over and over. I've seen it many times. I've done it before myself. So it happens to traders. So take that break. I can't tell you how important that is. Take that 30-minute break. Get your mind off trading, and then come back fresh. Reevaluate your chart. Figure out what you did wrong, and usually it'll be clear. And then wait, and then get back in the flow of things, and wait for a good trade. And if you don't get one, don't take it. And if you have two losses, you probably ought to just close up and go home and live to trade another day. Because like I said, losers lead to losers. And you need to get past that and get back on the winning track, so winners will lead to winners. And I will say this too now, you can have long winning streaks that will start to get to you. And so it works the same way if you get a long winning streak. Most of you are going to be more worried about losers leading to more losers right now. But if you get good at this, you'll get to the point where you'll have long win streaks. I mean, I've gone weeks without having a single losing trade. And I mean, I think I did. I want to say when I did a test of the MES when when it first came out, when it first started getting enough volume to trade. And so I tested that and I traded it live for about 3 months. I think I had 80 something, maybe 90 winners in a row. And people say that's not possible, and I showed you it was possible. And it's not, once you can do this, it's not as hard as you think. But when you start to get to that kind of a win streak, it will get to you. And you'll eventually make a mistake and take a loser, and it kind of refreshes you. But just same thing, walk away, close up for the day, come back tomorrow, and you'll probably get back on another win streak. And that's typically how it works when you get good at this. Yeah, it takes a while. You got to learn to read this chart. It's not about the patterns. It's about the context and putting the context with the patterns and knowing where to enter and where to sit tight. But remember that what I just told you, losers lead to losers. So when you have one, take that 30-minute break, get your mind off of it, come back fresh and start over again. And you'd be surprised how much better you'll do, how much money you'll save, how less likely you are to blow your account. Don't revenge trade. You've all heard it before, but we all still want to do it, and we all do it until you get disciplined. The difference between a break-even trader and a profitable trader is probably nothing more than discipline. Being able to sit tight look, this trade right here happened at just right around 10 o'clock, and you didn't really get another good trade until 12:35. So how many of you can sit there for 2 hours and 35 minutes and not take a trade? Very few of you. You're going to force a trade in here somewhere. Hopefully it's one of these green ones that work out that are just a little aggressive. But more than likely it's going to be where there's nothing marked and you're going to take a loser. And that's what happens to people. So be disciplined. Don't feel like you have to take a trade. No trade is better than a losing trade. Losers lead to losers. Winning trades lead to more winning trades. That's the side you want to be on. Don't be undisciplined. Don't force trades. Be able to sit there for 2 hours, 3 hours if that's what it takes. And on days like this, you're going to get stretches where you might have to go an hour, 2 hours, or 3 hours before you get a good trade. And if you miss that one, then there was no trades if you missed that one right there. So from 10 o'clock on, there was not a single trade you could take. And I guarantee you, most of you would force a trade in there somewhere. Hopefully it'd be one of these green ones. But more than likely, it's probably going to be one that's not, and you're going to take a loser until you get more experienced at it and more disciplined. So didn't mean to get off on that soap opera so deep today, but I think that's good to know because that's what happens to more people. They start to have success. They're moving along, their account's building, and then they have one day and it blows it all up. They lose it all in one day. Maybe they don't blow their whole account, but they lose all their profits in one day. 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, 2 months. Most of the time they blow their account if they get that far. So don't be that trader. But anyway, I'm going to wrap it up. We'll be back again to do it tomorrow. I'm done for today. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see